Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So a couple of videos ago, I made a video talking about how I feel slightly differently when I speak different languages. The video was basically about my experience with it and my theories for why does that happen. And a lot of you guys actually wrote in the comment section about your own experiences with this, and it was really cool to read it and be like, I relate. And in that video, I had promised that I was going to basically do a follow-up video where, after having done some research, which I have done, I have read plenty of research papers, I have read an entire book, alright, and basically explain what is the scientific basis for why does this happen. So in this video, I'm going to break down how all of these things end up having an effect that produces this phenomenon of feeling a little different in each language. Alright, so let's start with my favorite part, which is the linguistic and language-specific information. This one basically has to do with the fact that every language is different from every other language. So there are aspects of language that ultimately influence our perspectives and our worldviews and how we communicate and interact with everything. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that language is a way to represent life, and that these names that we give to things in turn influence their meaning. And so I want to go through a couple of examples of things, linguistic things, that are very indicative of how between languages we would see things differently. So the first thing is diminutives. So in Russian, you can modify just about any word with a diminutive to minimize it, right? Stol, stolik, voda, vodichka. It makes it like cute and sweet. So therefore, diminutives are kind of a way to convey a sense of endearment or intimacy, which then lends itself to having an emotionally warmer way of speaking and therefore feeling too. Existence or lack of certain words. So if there are concepts that you recognize are culturally significant enough to have a dedicated word to express them with, that is some influence, right? You mean it has some value, whereas in another culture it may not have a word for it, and therefore maybe they don't know about it or they just don't care enough. So that's a difference in perspective. Genders. So just like there are stereotypes and societal expectations for actual human genders, there may exist subtleties that sometimes happen when certain objects are of a certain gender. Also, the existence of different genders themselves itself can be an indication of something deeper, like maybe cultural awareness and respect for it, or I don't know. I just know that some languages, they have no genders, some have male and female, some have male-female neutral. There might be more, I'm not sure. Plurals and singulars. So this is a cool example how, like, in English, when you talk about your hair, you speak of it as a singular entity. You know, my hair is brown. But in French, you refer to it in the plural, so you would say mes cheveux. And what I find is really interesting when I hear Francophone people talk about their hair in English, they will often transfer that hair plurality into English, and they'll say something like, my hair are brown. Are brown. Then of course there's a very obvious one, which is formal versus informal language, like in French, tu versus vous, and in English it's just you for both. But then there's also phonetics, which is literally how the word sounds and how the specific phonological components that the word is composed of also have an influence on the perception of the word and therefore of the thing that the word represents. I talked about this actually in my names video, how like certain names, for example, that have more vowels, they give off one assumption about the person, whereas names with more consonants and less vowels give off a completely different assumption about a person. It's crazy. If you're interested, go check it out. I'll put a link below. Then there's also grammar structures. So even something, I think, like sentence structure and word order will influence our ideas of hierarchy and prioritization of stuff. Additionally, in grammar, conjugations and declensions in other languages likely also have some impact in how we perceive relationships between things in the world, like kind of how they become subordinate to the thing that enforces the conjugation or the declension. And finally, there's varied and nuanced meanings, which kind of applies to a lot of these above sections, but this basically goes back to what I said about the existence and lack of certain words. But like if a word does exist in both or multiple languages, then likely there are some undertones to it or nuances that are different between the two. All right. So the next section that I want to talk about in this is body language. That was weird. In language and in culture both, there are certain nonverbal cues that serve as additional forms of communication and ways to convey something to another person. These impact how we understand people further beyond just what they're saying and how we literally position ourselves in the world, how we're sitting, how we're looking at someone, things like that, how we're moving. So nods and head movements. You may have seen the Indian head bobble, pretty sure that's what it's called, which, as far as I understand, it can mean either yes, good, maybe, okay, I understand, depending on the context. I think it could even mean, depending on how you do it, it can mean no or not really. And a nod usually means a yes or agreement, but there are several exceptions where a single nod of the head up indicates a no. But like, at least in America, if you're walking by someone, right, and you want to acknowledge them, if you know them, you would do this, like, hey, what's up? But if you don't know them, I would do like a nod, like, I see you, I acknowledge you. Then there's also hand motions, so peace sign, thumbs up. Thumbs up means so many different things in different places. Then there's facial expressions where sticking your tongue out is regarded quite differently in different cultures. It can be an act of rudeness, disgust, playfulness, or outright sexual provocation. Also, closeness and proximity to other people. Like in Argentina, apparently an acceptable amount of space between strangers is 76.2 centimeters. In the US, it's 94.5 centimeters. Romania, it's 140.2 centimeters. Then there's just, greetings and goodbyes like bisous or bowing. Then there's also posture. And in the West, what we typically take from looking at someone's posture is like or dislike cues. Whereas in the East, it's more they take information about status and power. And then, of course, there's the cultural part where, obviously language and culture are intrinsically tied and one cannot truly exist without the other. Therefore, many aspects of culture also contribute to one's varying self-concept, self-perception, and behavior. So, and this can include things like clothes, right versus wrong, and your values generally, your gender, status, age, and how that works with respect, the tone, pitch, and volume of your voice, family, traditions and norms, beliefs. Like one example of how emotion concepts vary across languages. Let's use English and Russian, for example. So in English, it turns out that emotions are viewed as states and expressed by means of adjectives, whereas in Russian, emotions are viewed as processes and therefore expressed with verbs. And this ties back to basically the linguistic aspects of language too, proving just how interconnected all of this stuff is. So all of these things, they impact not only how you think, but then also how you choose to act. And that's kind of why when you're in the headspace of a particular language, you also have cultural things on it. You have body language things on it. So it's not just how you want to talk about things or how you kind of subconsciously think about things, but it's also how you're literally positioning your body with the other person, you know, and how you're moving and acting. Like, so many minute changes happen, and that's why it's so weird to suddenly switch from one language to another with a person who you've never spoken that language before. Like, it makes sense now. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.